Muscle is not bad for boxing. All right. Now, I'm tired of this statement being thrown around like muscle is bad for boxing. You know, a lot of boxing coaches are still living in the Stone Age. They truly believe that muscle is bad. It slows you down. It just tires you and all this, right? It's not good for boxing, basically. A stronger muscle doesn't hit harder, stuff like that, right? Misconceptions. Right, so let's get into that, right? But firstly, I am going to acknowledge that I have spoken bad about muscle and boxing to a degree. I've spoken bad about bodybuilding, and my stance on that still stands. All right, I still do not believe bodybuilding and fighting altogether mixes right that well. It can mix to a degree, but not that well. But muscle most definitely can mix, because not all training for your muscles is bodybuilding. So most of it, not most of it, but some of it is focused on functional training. All right. So let's get into that, or strength training, right? But let's get into that. So number one, you need useful muscles. So not all muscle is not all muscle mixes with boxing, but useful muscle most definitely does. Now, this is going to be different to the muscles that help with fighting in general when we're talking mixed martial arts or any other martial art. But referring to boxing alone, this is what I'm referring to basically. So number one, I'm going to talk about the myths, all right? So there's a bunch of muscles that people consider useful that aren't actually useful, okay? So I'm going to get into that. Number one is your arms, right? Most people think arms, big arms mean a big punch. And although to a degree that is true because of the manifested power through the weight, a heavier arm will therefore be a heavier punch, right? Like if that makes any sense, right? It's like having a heavier baseball bat, it's going to translate to more power, but it's not going to generate more power, right? Because if you hit the bag, right, your biceps and your triceps, sometimes your biceps from pulling your arm back, they do get some level of fatigue, but more time your biceps and triceps are not getting tired from punching, right? More time is not your biceps and triceps, it's your shoulders. Right, it's your shoulders that are getting tired. Sometimes even your legs from holding you up if you box with softer knees. But it's not going to be your arms, right? As I said, the only time I've ever felt bicep is when when it's about retracting my arms, basically bringing them right back. Right, then I feel a level of bicep, right? But other than that, so you could argue that helps, but not. It does not help with power. You just need to condition yourself, right? But that was when I was a bit of a noob in boxing. But in general, your arms do not assist that much in power. It's very minimal assistance, and therefore if you focus so much on arms, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? Number two, right, is your chest. This is a muscle that most people believe, and I understand why people believe that this helps in boxing, right? Because if you think about it, when you're punching, you're doing a horizontal push, and what's your chest responsible for? Horizontal push. But the problem that these people do not understand when they say that, you're not punching with your chest. You're not punching the same way that you would bench press, right? You're punching similar to how you would push up. Now, push-ups most definitely can help you with your chest, but it's not as good as bench press unless you focus on isolating your chest, right? Squeezing at the top of the movement. But you don't do that when you punch. No one squeezes at the top of the movement when they punch. They simply snap with the shoulder. It's the shoulder, not the chest. Right? If you know anybody hitting the heavy bag, anyone who actually boxes, at least the people I know from my experience of boxing, that they've never mentioned at the end of a heavy bag session that their chest is tired. Oh goodness, my chest is tired. Right? That's never been the case. They're always talking about the shoulders are heavy. Their arms are heavy. There's vomit on the sweater already. Mom spaghetti. But that's all they say. They never ever refer to their chest. Why is that? Because your chest is not responsible for your punching power. It's not responsible for your punches, full stop. It's barely even useful, right? Obviously, it is useful, but a stronger chest, right, is not going to translate to a much stronger punch, basically, compared to other muscles that we're going to get into in a bit. The only time your chest might hurt is if you've done like chest exercises. Maybe if you've just trained like chest, then maybe they might fatigue a little bit, right? But other than that, if you just go to the gym right now and you hit the bag for an hour straight, blasting the bag, if you are capable of doing that, your shoulders are going to get tired, but your chest isn't. Neither is your biceps or triceps, right? So let's go into the actual muscles that are useful for fighting, right? And obviously, your neck, right? That's a muscle. That's for defense. Your quads, keeping you up, helping you to actually translate more power as well into your hooks, especially if you're a shorter fighter and you coming up and down, changing levels. Your back, right? Your back is actually extremely useful. People believe that punches is such a push motion, but it's an it's almost an equal pull as it is a push. So whilst you are pushing with your shoulders, you are also pulling back with your lats and with your traps, right? So your back overall, I say your back overall because it has more uses than just power punching. But overall, your back is also useful. But most importantly, if you're referring to punch power, is your shoulders. Okay, this is what replaces your chest and your arms. People hit the bag for time, and yes, their shoulders are the ones that get tired, right? Their shoulders fatigue, not their chest, not their arms, but their shoulders. Okay, so if you wanna train weights and you want it to give you an athletic advantage when it comes to boxing, yeah, train your shoulders, and you will find that this most definitely can aid you in your boxing. Like, I'm not even joking. I'm not just speaking out my backside. I'm genuinely being honest. Shoulders most definitely aid in boxing, right? Even arm punches, right? People who arm punch versus body punch and all that stuff. Even arm punches should never really be arm punches when you are choosing to utilize them. They should always be shoulder punches in that sense, right? You do have arm punches where you are just pushing your arms. That does not produce as much force as your shoulders, right? So yet again, prioritize your shoulders. Now, what are the pros to having a muscular physique, right? To having strong muscles. And as I said, having strong quads, having a strong back, having a strong neck, and having strong shoulders, right? Number one is defense, right? To a massive degree. A bunch of muscle is like armor. You have armored plates on you, right? It's defense, right? That's number one, right? Obviously, you guys already know core and stuff like that. I don't need to get into that, right? But anyways, no boxing coaches think core is bad. But yeah, number one is defense. Number two is, believe it or not, power, right? People believe you can't improve power. Power punches are born and all that stuff. That is true, right? To a degree, is in they are born, but you most definitely can improve it. Power in punching is like jumping, right? To a large degree, it's like jumping. It's how much force can you produce in a short amount of time. Now, most definitely, jumpers are born, right? That is true. I've always been able to jump high. I say that when I give people advice on jumping. I'm naturally gifted when it comes to jumping. However, people still train their vertical jump, right? People who are not naturally as gifted in bounce still train their vertical jump, and often they end up jumping higher than people who are actually genetically gifted when it comes to bounce, right? So yet again, do not just believe that if you're not born with something you shouldn't work on it, right? You most definitely can still work on it. I am not a natural stamina freak. I'm gonna be honest, I do not have the most amount of endurance. My girlfriend gets vexed at me I'm joking, but what I am saying is I still work on my I still work on my endurance, right? I still run, right? I hit the bag for intensity as cardio sessions. I still spar for endurance as well, right? I do multiple rounds of sparring, focusing on endurance, focusing on my conditioning, right? So yet again, should I quit on my endurance work because I wasn't born as gifted with endurance? Of course not. So you don't have to quit on your power work just because you weren't born with the most amount of power. You can still maximize based off your genetics, okay? Not everyone's hair is going to be as long as each other's hair, but you can still grow your hair. You get what I'm saying? You have a genetic potential, but you can still push yourself to your potential. It doesn't mean you are at that end goal, at that end point yet, basically, right? So there's power. There's also speed, right? Muscles do not slow you down. If you have the right muscles, you have fast twitch muscle fibers. If anything, they're going to speed you up. That's one of the things my coach was really shocked about when I first came to the gym. He said, you got big arms and yada, yada. He thought I was going to be slow, but I was actually quite quick. My shots were quite snappy, and he was very surprised about that because muscles do not slow you down. They're fast twitch for a reason, because they contract quickly, right? Powerfully and quickly, right? So yet again, you get speed. And then lastly, which is kind of slept on thing, it also aids in intimidation. That's a massive thing, If you see someone mahusive, someone looking swole, it is intimidating to think you're going to fight them because as much as you have potentially this caveman idea that muscle is stupid, muscle is still intimidating. Let's not be stupid, right? I mean, there are weight classes for a reason. So there's that. Let's go into the cons now, right? Number one, fatigue. And this is a massive con. Bigger muscles, in particular, fast twitch muscles, will produce more lactic acid, right? That's that burn you feel in your shoulders after hitting the bag or during sparring. Why you can't bring your hands back up. Why your hands feel so heavy after sparring or during sparring, right? It's the amount of lactic acid being pumped into it. Now imagine you got some small shoulders or some average size shoulders. Now switch that for big shoulders. You got way more lactic acid being pumped in there. So there is a massive amount of muscular fatigue, right? Number two is excessive weight, okay? You have a whole bunch more weight from your weight class, basically. So if you have the wrong amount of muscle or the wrong types of muscle or the wrong muscle in general, you're focusing on your chest, you're focusing on massive arms and stuff like that, right? You end up weighing more. You end up being in a heavier weight class when you don't actually need to. So now you're fighting genuine hard hitters. You got a big chest, you've got big biceps, big arms, all these muscles that are not necessarily necessary. And you're going up against someone who has no muscle whatsoever, but he has massive shoulders. You are screwed, right? That's what I'm saying. You're not actually screwed, but you get what I'm saying, basically. So you are putting on excessive weight. That's another thing. Let's go over solutions. So there are solutions for the excessive weight, right? So you can just focus on having the useful muscles rather than having the pointless muscles, basically. That's a massive solution, and also by focusing on training for strength rather than just for appearance, and then also doing plyometrics, things like that. But that's not the main thing we're going to address. You guys already understand that. So let's go into the fatigue, right? There's two main solutions that I can think of, right? Number one is training your lactic tolerance, right? And you do that through anaerobic training. So training for, rather than just long jogs and things like that, practice, for example, if you have big shoulders and your shoulders are prone to getting a whole bunch of lactic acid, which tires you out, practice smashing the bag. Do bag work for cardio, right? And practice doing it intensely, not pitter patter, but intensely, right? So you get that lactic acid pumped into the muscle, and work on your tolerance. Keep working on it. Once you have that tolerance, you're able to throw more punches, more hard punches as well. Therefore, you're more dangerous, right? Number two, don't hit hard all the time. Vary your punches. Either you can be more of a patient puncher who doesn't have a massive amount of output, sort of like Tank Davis, or you can just vary your punches. Not all of your punches need to be hard. Not all of your punches need to recruit that amount of lactic acid, basically, right? So, or produce that amount. So focus on, for example, doing a few light shots, not making all your shots count. Don't punch all your shots with the meanest intentions, basically, if you still want to have a decent amount of output. Or, as I said, you can just lower your output. But that's it, basically. Those are the pros, the cons, and the solutions to the cons as well. But overall, muscle is not a bad thing for boxing. There are bad boxers with muscle. People like Frank Bruno wasn't a bad boxer, but, the muscle did tire him out a lot, right? But there are people like Evander Holyfield. They weren't a disservice to him. Mike Tyson, they weren't a disservice to him. Even Anthony Joshua, people call him a bodybuilder all they want. How many bodybuilders do you know that ended up at the Olympics, right? So, and won gold, all right? So, yet again, muscle is not bad for boxing. I hope this video helped you guys out, cleared up some stuff. It's Beautiful Flex, and I'm out.